Hello and welcome to Elecspo, and thanks to you demanding people, here is part 5 of what would happen if Celtic and Rangers were in the Premier League. We've already gone 12 years into the future and you people have asked for even more, so that's exactly what you're getting. Celtic are now a mainstay in the Premier League and look like a solid mid-table side, while Rangers are finally finding their feet in the top flight despite spending years as a yo-yo club. But today I'm going to simulate another 3 years into the future and see where the old firm giants are by the summer of 2035. Okay, so this is where we left things in 2032. Celtic had just finished in 13th place, while Rangers were 2 places lower in 15th. But at least Rangers are starting to survive in the Premier League. This is 2 years in a row in which they've survived, which is better than they've ever done before. As for Celtic, they're pretty consistent. They've been slightly on the up, they've just dropped down to 13th. But at least they are a consistent figure in the Premier League. Let's simulate a year into the future. Let's go to 2033 and see how the Glaswegian sides are getting on. Okay, here we are, the 19th of June 2033, the 13th season of this simulation. And Celtic have just had one of their best seasons ever. They have finished 7th with 60 points. They were only 5 shy of Liverpool, who came 6th. But you'll notice that Celtic didn't qualify for the Europa Conference League. Right, this is where the limitations of the simulation have come into play. And I need one of you to help us out, to be honest with you. With these teams coming from a different country into the English League, the European coefficient doesn't carry over or something like that. So even if Celtic come top, I don't think they'd make it into the Champions League, because Celtic should be in the Europa Conference League next season. Leeds didn't win a trophy, they didn't win either the FA Cup or the League Cup. It should be Celtic in the Europa Conference League, but it's not. So if you know how to fix this problem in the comments below, please let me know. But anyway, at least Celtic have had a great season. Gaz Brady, your friend and mine, he scored 17 goals, almost getting himself the golden boot. Very good from Celtic. As for Rangers, they've done better than they did last year. They've still survived. I mean, let's take baby steps with Rangers. Let's walk before we can run. This has been the 3rd season of successive Premier League football, and they're going to be going into next season's Premier League as well. They've came 14th with 38 points, 4 clear of the relegation zone, so they still went a mile away from the relegation, but they have survived. Christ, Arsenal nearly had an invincible season again. The only game they lost was to Celtic. Let's head straight to Celtic. Let's see how they are getting on. There's been a change of manager. They are now managed by Eddie Howe, the man who in reality is set to become the boss at Celtic Park if all goes to plan. Let's see what happened to the managers. Kuchka got the sack on the 27th of November and Eddie Howe came in just over 2 weeks later, and he's taken Celtic to 7th in the Premier League table. So it was the 27th of November, Kuchka got the sack. Let's have a look at the table. Let's see what was happening with Celtic. They did fall down the table. They were as low as 18th at one point at the start of December, and it was around this time they got beat off Chelsea. That was the final game for Kuchka. And to be honest, you can see why he got the sack. Celtic were hurtling towards the relegation zone. They did eventually drop in. But since Eddie Howe came in, it's been pretty impressive, to be honest with you. He got them stable in the top half, then a late surge got them into 7th place. Let's have a look how they got on in the cup competitions as well. We'll have a look at the old firms as well. Start with the cups. They were knocked out straight away at the League Cup by Bolton on penalties. That's pretty bad. As for the FA Cup, they made it to the 5th round, where they were beaten on penalties by Crystal Palace. So that's a little bit disappointing. But there was a pretty rough run here, which is what got Kuchka the sack. They beat Southampton at the end of September. Then after that, they went on a horrible run. They only picked up 2 points. You can see drawn with Bournemouth, drawn with Palace. They were getting battered. And the defeat of Chelsea was the end. They lost 3-0 and then it was all over. Eddie Howe came in and things have been on the up. A 7th place finish is pretty damn good. Let's have a look at the old firms. The first one was won by Celtic 2-1, Gaz Brady of course getting himself a goal. As for the second one, it was Rangers who won. Eddie Howe's first Old Firm derby ended in defeat. Rangers absolutely battered them 3-0 at Ibrox. If my memory serves me correctly, neither Celtic nor Rangers have done the double over their biggest rivals, which is quite interesting. We'll have a little look at the transfers for Celtic, see what kind of money's been spent. £54 million. The biggest rival being Fernando, sorry, I thought it was Fernando. Fernando from Palmeiras. Going to assume he's a regen. He is. We're getting to the point where there's only really regens, which is alright, but they brought £74 million in on player sales, so they've brought in more money than they put out, which is financially pretty good for the Celtic board, especially considering they can't get themselves in Europe because of my dodgy limitations. Let's move on to Rangers. As we say, they've came 14th. Philip Cocu, still there, still absolutely loving it. Let's have a look how they got on in the cup competitions. League Cup knocked out early by Fulham, and the FA Cup they were knocked out by Man City. I mean, there's a lot of defeats there. It hasn't been a wonderful season for Rangers, but they've had a few good spells. Over Christmas here, they were really good. They got 4 wins on the bounce, 6 unbeaten in the Premier League. Some good spells have kept Rangers in the Premier League, but at the end of the season, it was probably a little bit ropey, to be honest with you. They were only 4 points clear of the relegation zone. The last time they won was against Wolves, 2-1 at Molineux back in April. We'll have a little look at the transfers for Rangers, see if anyone interesting came in. They spent £102 million. Eddie Grubasic, £34.5 million. He was the biggest arrival. Going out, they did recoup a kind of fair bit of cash, £67 million, but they still spent £35 million there, I think, if my maths is correct. They're spending more money, Celtic are receiving more money, but in the end, it's Celtic who are doing the better out of the two teams. So after season 13, Celtic have just equalled their best ever finish of 7th. As for Rangers, they're enjoying their longest spell in the Premier League. But let's go into the summer of 2034. Let's see what happens as we look at the 14th season of this simulation. Okay, here we are, the 18th of June 2034. And yet again, Celtic have came 7th. 60 points yet again on the board. It's been another excellent season for Eddie Howe's Celtic side. As for Rangers, they're doing pretty well too. They've came 13th with 43 points on the board. Rangers are finally settled in the Premier League. And one of the new men from last summer, Eddie Grubasic, has just equalled Dennis Tomic to get the most assists in the Premier League all season. Rangers are finally getting some joy in the Premier League. As for Celtic, they should be playing for Europe if it wasn't for me. I mean, I've cost them here, but never mind. Still managed by Eddie Howe. Let's go straight to the schedule, see if there's been any cup joy. If they're not going to get it in Europe, I want to see some cup joy. They were knocked out of the Carabao Cup early by Newcastle. Let's go to the FA Cup. They made it to the final. Celtic, for the first time in their history, made it to the FA Cup final. En route to the final, they beat Everton, Portsmouth, Chelsea. They beat Rangers in the quarter-final. That'll have been a huge result at Ibrox. In the semi-finals, they beat Norwich in extra time. And unfortunately for Celtic, they couldn't get past Manchester United in their first ever Wembley final. But it's progress, at least we've got there. As for the old firms, let's have a little look. Obviously we know about the Cup one. In the league, they met early on in the 5th game of the season. It was a 1-1 draw at Celtic Park. Gaz Brady there with his typical goal. Then Celtic won the second one at Ibrox 3-0. So it's been a dominant season for Celtic, unbeaten in the old firm games. They even won an FA Cup quarter final against their biggest rivals. Let's have a look at the transfers, see what's been going on. Christ, big money. £104 million spent, including Reece James on a free. Is that the Reece James? It must be. It's the Reece James. And he's done bloody brilliantly. Well done you. Elsewhere, they've brought in £196 million. That's huge money. And most of it has come from Carlos Trevino. £93 million to join Manchester United at the end of the season. For Celtic, he's been absolutely sensational. They got him on a free from Mexican side Toluca. What a profit Celtic have made on this Mexican midfielder. Let's go over to Rangers though. They've just enjoyed a pretty decent season, coming 13th, still managed by Philip Cocu. What on earth is it going to take to get him out of that job? I mean, how old is Philip Cocu at this point in time? 63, he's probably thinking about retirement soon. But he's having a grand old time in Glasgow. They're doing brilliantly, Rangers. I'm finally happy to see they're settled in the Premier League. Let's have a look. We know they got the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. As for the League Cup, knocked out in the 3rd round by Southampton. But they've survived. Rangers are probably just happy surviving in the Premier League, because for so long they were going up and down, up and down, up and down, from the Premier League to the Championship and vice versa. They spent £60 million. No big names sticking out there. I thought that was Ika Munyan, but it's Ika Martin. Ryan Fisher, thought that was Ryan Fraser. It's not. coming in £35 million. Ibrahim Konate is gone, didn't even realise he was there. Let's have a little look. The man who's set to join Liverpool in reality. He signed in 2032, played 24 games, did alright, and now they're selling him already at a loss. Strange dealings going on at Rangers, but he is gone, so that's disappointing. And they've also lost Ianis Hagi to Dinamo Kiev. I think he was the vice captain for a long time. But his time at Rangers is over. The best player at Rangers has been Korai, that guy there whose name I'm not going to even try and butcher. Stephen Davidson's done well on loan up front, 17 goals. We'll have a little look at Celtic, see who the main man's been there, because we haven't looked at that. Eddie Howe's still the manager, of course. Best player has been Teodoro Cayo, 12 goals, 9 assists. He's a Spanish striker and he's a wanted man. Newcastle United are interested. Newcastle, who are going to be playing in Europe next season. They've came 6th. But we're not here to talk about Newcastle, we're here to talk about Celtic and Rangers. Let's go into the third and final season we're going to look at today. Let's go to the summer of 2035. Okay, here we are, the 17th of June 2035. Celtic have dropped down the table slightly from 7th to 9th. As for Rangers, they've dropped as well, but they are still in the Premier League. They have came 15th, but I'm going to go straight to Celtic because they are on the lookout for a new manager. Eddie Howe was sacked at the end of the season. I can't believe they've done that. Surely being in the top half of the Premier League was enough for Celtic. Obviously they've got ideas above the station now. 9th, not good enough for Celtic, and Eddie Howe has been sacked. And I've just realised actually, this is the second time that Eddie Howe has been manager. I totally forgot that he was there at the start of the simulation. This time he lasted a little bit longer, but it still ended in the sack for Eddie Howe. Let's have a look at the schedule, see how they got on. Was there another cup final perhaps? I'm going to imagine no. They were knocked out of the League Cup in the third round. In the FA Cup, they made it to the semis, beaten by Arsenal. Celtic improved in the cups, couldn't match the final they did last year. And they've still finished 9th. 9th's a great finish for Celtic. In the Old Firm games, they won the first one 2-0 at Celtic Park. As for the second one, it was Rangers who won 3-2. A dramatic game by the looks of things at Ibrox. Rangers went 2-0 up, then Celtic got it back to 2-2. Then Luke Wallace settled the game in the 67th minute. Let's have a look at the transfers for Celtic. Christ, they have spent a lot of money. Has there been a takeover or something? £64 million coming in. They spent £370 million. £96 million spent on Sekou Oumar Reynard from Marseille. Fabio Ferreira, £58 million. Ruben Song, £52 million. Let's have a look at that record signing. He's just arrived this summer, so he hasn't actually featured. He's a French centre midfielder, 21 years old. Let's check him out. That is a lot of money for a guy who's only really had one successful season in France. I mean, he was pretty decent, but that's a lot of money for Celtic. Christ, has there been a takeover? Let's have a little look. There has. Nathan Little has just bought the club. There's been a few takeover attempts in recent years. Nathan Little, the new man. And he has spent huge money. A lot of these transfers just happened at the end of the season. The two big ones have. But even before then, they were spending huge cash. I wonder what's happened there for Celtic to be spending so much money. I mean, I suppose when you look at that, it's no wonder that Eddie Howe got the sack. With that much money spent, you'd think they'd be able to kick on from 7th. But in anything, they've gone backwards. Let's move on to Rangers, who are still managed by Philip Cocu. Eddie Howe's been to Celtic twice, whilst Philip Cocu is still there. How did Rangers get on in the Cups? The League Cup, they made it to the semi-finals. A decent effort. Beaten by Liverpool. In the FA Cup, beaten by Manchester City. Christ, there was a rough patch between just after New Year. Christ, the results were absolutely wretched. A late surge has kept them in the Premier League. They finished 15th with 39 points. They were 7 points clear of the relegation zone, which is pretty good. And as you can see, Rangers are steadily ticking on by. This is their longest spell in the Premier League. They seem settled, but not quite as settled as Celtic. Celtic are now an established top 10 team. A team so good that they think a manager finishing 9th isn't good enough for them. Celtic could be on the brink of something special. With this kind of money being spent, perhaps Celtic can even break into the top 6. The only way you're going to find out is if you badger us in the comments for a part 6 of this series. But this is the point where we're going to leave things. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. As always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Elecspo. And until next time, we will see you around.